Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I am Star from 93.1 WZAK. You can listen to me daily, Monday through Friday on the Sam Sook Show with Bijou Star. And my partner over here, Maddie.
Yeah, what up? What up, B? Maddie Will's checking in as well, of course, with Z1079.
Yes. And so we are so excited to have you here with us today. Sure. It is Black History Month. Okay. This is my favorite month of the year. Okay. And it is only fitting that today we take this time to give you information on how we can build Black Cleveland, right? So today we're going to be talking about funding Black-led community initiatives and nonprofits. So if you right now have a nonprofit, you are in the right place. If you know somebody who has a nonprofit, text them real fast, tell them to come on in and join us. Share the link, let people know we are here right now, giving you important information on how you can get your Black-led nonprofit funded, all right? That is the number one thing you need to get your organization running is funds, and we have information on how you can get that today. All right. So we're really excited. Make sure that you hashtag Black Futures Fund CLE, CLE, when you post about this as well. We want to get this hashtag rolling too. All right. So we're going to get into details about how you can get grants, like I said, and funding and all that good stuff. But first, we want to give you a little more introduction on what is exactly happening this evening.
That's right, Bijou. And welcome to you. Welcome to everybody that's tuned in. You know, we're really excited for this for all of the reasons that B just went over. And more specifically about tonight, today, we'll be learning about how Black-led Cleveland nonprofits serve the Black community through the Cleveland Black Futures Fund. The launch of the Cleveland Black Futures Fund represents a new and more intentionally anti-racist approach in the Cleveland Foundation's work, a direction that is necessary if we wish to move our entire community forward. We do not yet have all the answers, but we will continue to listen, learn, and act. But it starts here. And B, just real quick, to cap what you just said, there's really nothing more important than good information. So if you know anybody that needs this information, please just share this with them right now, tag them, whatever, by any means necessary to get it to them.
Yes. Okay, so let's get into our special guest that we have with us this evening, our panelists. So we're going to start with Courtney A. Barton, and she is the Program Director for Arts and Culture and Racial Equity Initiatives with the Cleveland Foundation. Hi, Courtney.
Hello.
And next we have Connie Hill Johnson, Board Member of the Cleveland Foundation. Hello, Connie.
Good evening.
Then we have Trey Johnson, the Regional Outreach Manager with the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland.
Good evening.
What up?
And then last but not least, my son, Chanel Smith-Wiggum. She is the Vice President of Sustainability and Social Impact at KeyBank.
Hey, y'all.
So welcome, everybody. We do want, you can give it a little bit of an introduction to yourself before you answer your first question, just to let the people know, what you represent and all of that. But this first one is an open question to the panel. So we'll just start on the top row with Courtney. How has the past year impacted the Black community?
That is quite a question. So I am Courtney. I'm the Program Director for Arts and Culture and Racial Equity Initiatives at the Cleveland Foundation. So I kind of wear two hats. And in fact, up until last year, I only wore one, and that was Arts and Culture at the Cleveland Foundation, really focusing on arts organizations. And then 2020, upended everything that we thought we knew about the world, right? COVID-19 happened. People kept telling us it was going to be an equal opportunity pandemic. It has not been. It has definitively been more devastating, more deadly for the Black community specifically. And on top of that, while everybody was either stuck at home, or in our community, we have many more essential workers than in other communities. So we still had to go out there into the community and do this work. And we didn't know everything that we needed to know to stay safe at that point in time. we saw people who were being shot and killed in the streets by police. And so on top of everything, we had to fight for our rights. And we didn't even know when people went out into the streets to protest whether or not they were going to be at risk of getting COVID-19. So everything became much, much higher stakes for the Black community last year.
Anybody else?
I'll jump in. My name is Connie Hill Johnson, and I am currently a board member of the Cleveland Foundation. This last year has been a roller coaster, both personally and professionally. I'm an entrepreneur, and I own a home care agency. So my staff are primarily home health aides and STNAs. And so when you talk about those on the front lines and those who are out in the trenches and the essential workers, I employ quite a bit of them, who many have contracted the virus. Many have had to quarantine because they've been exposed. But what became vivid to me this last year was many of my staff were caught between a rock and a hard place. They could not work because they needed the money. Many had children who were not able to go to daycare or school, so they were struggling with the remote learning. Some of my staff struggled with internet capabilities or having a laptop or a desktop computer. So I really experienced as an employer and as an entrepreneur the day-to-day challenges that we hear the news folks talk about, of those right out there in the midst of it. I am even now getting staff signed up for the vaccine because we're an essential worker, but still yet hearing some of them hesitant, saying, I don't know, Connie. And I'm sure you all are going to have a conversation on another day about our concerns as African Americans with this vaccine. As a member of the board of the foundation, we were in the midst of a strategic plan revision right when all of this hit the fan last summer. And we had to pivot as a board and step back and say, before we put pencil to paper, how are we going to incorporate what is going on in our city and around the country, particularly as the world's oldest community foundation? So how do we thread through every fabric of this new strategy, the whole discussion about racial equity and inclusion, and what are we going to actively do in this community if indeed we are the leaders that most citizens in the city of Cleveland look up to. So out of that birthed what we're going to talk about tonight with Courtney at the helm.
And I think I just want to add, and I'm Chanel, and I work at KeyBank, and I lead our corporate community initiatives and relations team. But I just want to add, I feel like the pandemic and the murder of George Floyd really amplified, exacerbated, or even shed a light on some of the inequalities that we were already seeing in our community, right? So we've known for a long time in Cleveland that there's been a digital divide. We've known a long time in Cleveland that we have food deserts. We have known for a long time that there's environmental degradation and environmental inequities in our community. But I think the pandemic has really brought to light that we all need to come together to solve these solutions, and that our communities, the people that are dealing with those problems, are the people that actually have the answers to those solutions. And so that's why I was really excited to join this advisory board at the Cleveland Foundation, because I think it's really about giving people the power and the agency to solve and work with their community to move it forward.
Man. So I feel like the challenge of going last is that you're always like, man, everybody else has already picked off all the stuff I was thinking. So quick introduction to myself. So Trey Johnson, Regional Outreach Manager at the Cleveland Fed. So I work in community development. So my job really is to be out in the community trying to figure out what's going on and bringing that information back to the bank to figure out how we can be helpful. I think there's so many ways that, sorry, I have to pause. So if you ever heard anybody from the Fed talk before, I do have to say that any comments I make tonight are my own personal comments, and they do not reflect the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland or our Federal Reserve System. So sorry, I need to get that out the way. But talking about it, I think, Connie, really hit on this, and Courtney hit on it too. I mean, I think that in every way that you can kind of measure how people were impacted through COVID, Black people were impacted the most. And I think it's one of those things where if you asked us deep down, we knew this was going to happen. I mean, like we knew that we were at most risk. If you look at, what jobs were considered essential and what people had to be on the front lines, whether it was, you looked at the wage gaps, where you look at housing insecurity and food insecurity, all those issues, like we were already, like we knew we were going to be in the most danger. And so when we look at the data now, and, that's part of the job we do at the Fed, is looking at how it's impacting people. Like we're seeing, like, it's exactly what we thought was going to happen. And so I think it's kind of just piggybacking on what Chanel said, like this is, actually, I'll just stop. I don't want to get too far out of my line, but yeah.
It's all good.
All right, so we'll move on to our next question. And this is directed to Connie. What is the Cleveland Foundation, and also what prompted it to start the fund?
Well, I touched on it a little bit, but in the event that there are, I'm sure, many who may not know about the Cleveland Foundation, I'd like to think that's not the case, but for those that don't know, and our listeners, the Cleveland Foundation is the world's first community foundation, and it was established by Frederick Goff back in 1914. And as just a little sidebar comment, I found out years ago that Frederick Goff originally lived in Glenville. So when I found that out, I said, being a Glenville girl myself, growing up in that neighborhood. But the foundation's primary focus is addressing the needs of Greater Clevelanders through grant making. We primarily service 3 counties. That's Cuyahoga County, Cuyahoga County, I'm drawing a blank. Help me out here, Courtney.
Lake and Geauga.
Lake and Geauga. I wanted to say Lorain. Cuyahoga County, Lake and Geauga.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of what we talked about earlier, the events of last year, again, the organization knew we had to begin to address the disparate needs of the minority community here in the Cleveland area, and be very intentional and purposeful about our grant making to serve the underserved community.
Great.
Got you. So we'll keep it moving, and we're here gathered to talk about virtually gathered to talk about the Cleveland Black Futures Fund. And Courtney, can you give us a brief overview of what that is?
Yeah. So as Connie alluded to, the Cleveland Foundation supports the community through grant making. We are the world's oldest community foundation. Philanthropy foundations across the country have, unfortunately, a pretty bad track record in supporting Black-led nonprofits. The data indicates that no more than 8% of all foundation grants in the country go to communities of color, right? Just 8%. Black people are at least 13% of the population, and we're getting a sliver of 8% of all grant making. And so for us, the Cleveland Black Futures Fund is a way for us to begin, and I want to stress that it is a beginning, but begin to be accountable and do more and be more intentional about making grants to support the Black community, especially in a city like Cleveland, which has a huge Black population and has so much rich Black history, so much Black culture. Our grant making needs to keep up with that. And in part because we know and we believe that the people closest to a problem are closest to the solution, because they're up in it all day long. They see it. They know what the contours of it are. And so this summer, when the protests broke out here in Cleveland, the board of the Cleveland Foundation allowed us to propose a solution for what we as a foundation could be doing, and this fund was it. So they allocated $2.5 million to start this fund. It's a start because we do want this to be a long-term fund. And after we announced this, we were so excited that so many people, they agreed. They said, yes, this is what we need to do. And so we have been able to raise significant amounts of funding for this, bringing the fund to about $4 million at this point. We've gotten a number of local foundations that have contributed, a large grant from Facebook to help grow this fund as well. And so we are, in this place where we are taking applications from Black-led organizations who are doing this work, who have been doing this work, and who can let us know what their needs are to be sustainable and to keep doing this work.
That's great information. So, and Courtney, you touched on the question I'm about to ask Chanel just a little bit, but why are we focusing this fund on Black leaders and Black serving organizations?
So thanks for that question. And I think there's many answers to it, but I'm going to answer it as a Cleveland implant. I moved to Cleveland about 10 years ago. And as Connie knows, I live in the Glenville neighborhood. My husband and I made an intentional decision to live in the city of Cleveland and to live in this neighborhood. But one of the first things that people would ask me when I moved to Cleveland is, are you going to live on the east side or the west side? And that's really a result of Cleveland being one of the most segregated cities in the country, segregated by the Cuyahoga River. And a friend of mine called the Cuyahoga River the Berlin Wall earlier this week. And that to me was really telling, just to think about the level of investment that we've seen on each sides of the river, or the lack of investment we've seen in some of our communities. But I think why Black focus is because we are a majority Black city. We are a city that we, like Courtney just mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, is that we know that the people who are closest to the problem can solve the problem. No one, and I think we just saw this in this recent election, not to bring up politics, but we saw what happened in Georgia. We saw the level of investment in the New Georgia Project, in the countless organizations led by Black women and Black initiatives that really carried Georgia to making sure that the Senate is majority supportive of people and organizations and the missions that we care for, right? And so I think if we are able to see that sort of impact and have that level of investment here in Cleveland, that can really help us move our numbers, and so that we're not seen as the city that's the worst city in America for Black women. And we can definitely talk more about that in this conversation.
And I don't know, Maddie, you want to? We actually have a question from someone in our in the audience, our virtual audience, and shout out to everybody who is chiming in. We see your comments as well. But the question is, this is the first grant our organization has applied for. What kind of assistance is available for filling out the application? And I think that might be best geared toward Courtney.
Okay, so I have to say that this is, we are building a plane as we are flying it. This is right now a very small team effort. And with that in mind, we've had to make the application as accessible as possible so that people who have not had any experience applying for a grant will be able to complete this application. There's no guesswork involved in it. We are asking direct questions. I was an English and creative writing major. It is organized around the 5 W's and the H: who, what, where, when, why, and how. And if you can answer all of those questions about the work that you are doing, you don't need to hire anybody or get any outside assistance to complete this application. It was very important for us to make it easy for everybody to be able to complete.
Can I add to that, Courtney, as someone who's applied for grant funding? And I know Trey probably has something to add to this too, but just be clear and concise about who you are, what you need. Don't overthink it. Have someone else read it over for you before you submit it. But I think being clear and concise is probably the best thing that you can do as you approach this application.
Got you. And as the viewer questions are rolling in, so I hope you're all ready to think on your toes. But this next one actually kind of ties into what we were already planning on. So another question from the viewers is, what is the grant request process? And we were going to go to Trey with this already, so you can start, bro.
Okay, so there are going to be 2 grant cycles this year. There's one that is going on now. They'll be closing on February 26th, and then after that, there will be another grant cycle, kind of late summer or early fall. So those 2 grant cycles throughout the year, you can apply through the Cleveland Foundation's grant portal, which I believe is on their Cleveland Foundation website. And like Courtney said, I mean, you can, the application is straightforward. I mean, I think. From my perspective, I think that's really valuable. So before I got to the Fed, I used to work at 2 different foundations in Northeast Ohio. And I remember a lot of times having conversations with people who are like, hey, I've never, same question, I've never applied for a grant. And so I applaud the fact that this grant process is so straightforward. And I think one recommendation I give people is to just be clear about what your program is and what it's not. So don't try to promise like, hey, I'm going to be able to serve 30,000 people when you're a one-person shop. Like, if you can make an impact in your little corner of the city, in whatever neighborhood you're in, and you can do that really well, say that. Like, don't you don't want to overpromise. And then, I mean, I would say just be very clear about what you can do well. I think this is probably one of the most supportive efforts to be out there that's going to help Black-led nonprofits. So, I mean, I think like this is something where you should be able to be honest about like, hey, this is what I need, this is what I can do. So that's the application process. And then I also just threw in my little 2 cents on the recommendations.
And then that website is clevelandfoundation.org.
Yep.
.org.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the next question, and then we're going to take another question from our audience as well. So this is for Chanel and Trey. What do you mean by growing organizational capacity? If you could explain that a little more also and give us some examples.
Trey, you want to go first?
I was going to let you go first, because I have
okay.
He's a gentleman.
Okay. I mean, to me, it can mean a few different things, but it's also based on what is the need of your organization, right? And so there are some organizations that have been around for a few years. They have a great program going in their neighborhood, but maybe not many people know about their program. So maybe they need capacity around marketing and communications, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you need capacity around growing your board of directors. One of the things that we don't always talk about in 501c3s is you really need a strong board, a board that has connections in the community, connections to other people who can donate to your nonprofit, and also people who maybe have legal and accounting experience that can really help you and be responsible board members. And so the capacity, to me, organizational capacity, is really based on what is your biggest need to grow your organization. And like Trey said, you as a nonprofit, I think sometimes we have a tendency to want to be everything to everyone and to do all things. And so that capacity question really needs to be focused on the need that you have for your organization.
Gotcha. But you want me to pick up with the, oh no, I'm sorry. Trey,
no,
go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing I think why it's important though, is just because of the fact that like, especially if you're going to go to other foundations and you're looking for other sources of funding, capacity is always an issue that we think about. And I will say, sadly, when I was in philanthropy, I had to say no to so many Black-led organizations because they didn't have that. They weren't ready to accept grant dollars. And I know that sounds crazy because they're like, wait, we can figure out how to use the money. But the reality is that, if an organization if a funder isn't familiar with your organization, they're going to be like, well, wait, do they have the capacity to do this? You may tell me you need $100,000, but if I give you a $100,000 grant, are you really going to be able to be a good steward of that? So, this capacity building is so important because I think it also sets you up long-term for being able to say like, okay, not only is this going to help you get familiar with the way that foundations work, but this will also set you up so that way in the future, you can be ready to apply to another foundation or another funder and really say like, okay, we've done this, we've built some capacity in our organization and we can handle a bigger grant. Because I think the reality, I mean, Courtney mentioned the stats on the number of, or the percentage of the dreadfully low percentage of philanthropic dollars that go to Black-led organizations. But I think the other issue is that even when they get them, they're smaller dollars. I mean, you're getting, you may get $5,000 to run a project, but you may not be ready to get an ongoing operating support. And so I think that this type of capacity building will help you in the long run, like to build your organization so that you can thrive, so you can thrive long term.
And can I just interject, because Trey, this panel here, this committee knows what it is like to work in the trenches of organizations, right? Like, this is not a panel of people who don't know what it's like to lead a nonprofit, nor to work in a nonprofit, to wear the many hats, to do all of the things, and to know intimately from the other side what it is like to not have the funding to do those things, right? Not have the funding to get the insurance that you need in order to operate this youth program that that you can do. And so that is the point of us focusing on organizational capacity. Because if we can help, if we can be the place to help an organization get that piece in place, to get that fiscal oversight, so that when they want to go for another grant, and the question is, well, how will you manage this? Because we have a CFO or we have an accountant, we have the CPA on call and ready to help us do it. That's the importance, I think, here of doing this fund, because the other part of that is that it's really hard to find foundations that are willing to do that. And that's why we, put our stake in the ground here and said, we're going to do the organizational capacity, because to Trey's point, it is significantly easier to get programming dollars to take kids on a field trip than it is to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
All right. And I just want to say to everybody, thank you so much for all your questions. And I think a lot of our questions that we're going to ask may answer some of the questions that you have. So we want you to stick around and hear all of the rest of the questions that we have. We don't have too many more, but we're going to definitely get to your questions as well. And we love how many are rolling in, and we're going to get to them. But we do want to ask a few more questions of our panelists before that might actually tap into some of the questions that you have. And then we'll jump into your questions as well. So please keep them rolling in, because we're definitely going to get to them.
Absolutely. And we definitely are logging them, so we're not going to lose track of where we are, anything like that. But Connie, we ain't heard from you in a second. This next question is for you. What is a realistic outcome of the fund, and how is success measured with it?
Well, I think one of our desired outcomes is that we will continue to grow this fund. As Courtney said, it was originally seeded with $2.5 million from the foundation, and we've received some other generous dollars. So we are continuing to hopefully solicit dollars to grow the fund. I think too, the outcome that we would desire is, again, to see these Black-led, Black-run funds sustain over multiple years. I think we all can reflect back on knowing individuals who run 501c3s, and they may have been around 5 years ago and now they're not around. And we can all raise our hand and say, we know the main reason that they're not around is, again, lack of dollars. So I think the one way we will know that we're successful is as we metric and track those 501c3s that we will be granting money to, that when we go back in a year or go back in 2 years or go back in 3 years, they're still alive, they're thriving, they've grown, they're serving a larger portion of the community, they've been able to add staff, they built that capacity that we are talking about. Because again and again, what hurts Black-led and Black-serving 501c3s is not having the dollars to meet the need. We know the need is there. Everyone on this call knows the need in our community, and there are many. But we are hoping, as we build this, as we're flying the plane, as Courtney said, is we're going to have to establish as a committee what those metrics are and what we're going to want to hear back from the grantees. I'm sure everyone listening knows that we're not just going to grant out the dollars and say bye-bye and not want to hear back in terms of, how did you use the dollars? What are the metrics? Come report back to us. What more can we do? How can we point you even in the direction in the community of some other resources? How can you perhaps partner with other 501c3s? I know one of the things I've seen over the years is there perhaps could be one organization in the Glenville area and then another organization in the Mount Pleasant area, and they're both doing the exact same thing. And for reasons unknown, or perhaps we do know, if they would come together maybe for some opportunity, you might be able to serve a larger part of the community and get greater dollars. So our hope is, as a community, that as a committee, is that we're not just granting dollars, but we're able to point those 501c3s to other resources that will help them grow and be sustainable. When we look out 5-10 years, they're still around, still serving the community.
That's good to hear. So, Courtney, how do listeners apply? I know you've definitely expounded on this a little bit already, but another part of that question is also, how can people get to the fund?
So, Cleveland Foundation website, clevelandfoundation.org/futures. Go to the website. We actually have designed a wealth of resources specifically for this opportunity, many more than from any other opportunity that we have at the Cleveland Foundation. There are slides. There's a long form video. There's a short form video. There's an FAQ. All of the questions that are in the proposal are actually in a PDF request for proposals on the website. You have to be able to apply through the grant portal. So you go to the website, you sign up for credentials, and you get access to that. But there can be a delay. So we decided that we would put all of the questions out there in this PDF so that you can get started working on the proposal without having to get into the portal. And then when you're in there, just cut and paste and submit.
Oh, that's awesome.
Dope.
Now, as far as giving, if one wants to donate, how does that work?
The exact same website. We have a button for people who are trying to get funding from the website and a button for people who would like to donate. And I do have to say, and I want to make this really clear, because before I was on this side of the table creating funds like this, I was a grant seeker. I think it's important for us to say that there are people who have the drive and the vision, who know how to roll up their sleeves and do the work. And then there are people who don't know how to do that. That's not their forte, but they don't mind putting in a few dollars. And I feel like this fund is a bridge between the people who are doing the work and the people who want to support doing that work. When people were protesting this summer, I couldn't go out and protest, right? But I thought, what would people need who are out there, right? So I can give a couple of dollars to a bail fund or something like that. And that was my way of contributing to the work at that time. This is a way for people to be able to contribute to the work at this time.
And if I could plug in here too, because Courtney knows I am a huge proponent of specifically talking Black philanthropy. Mm-hmm. And so we do have in Cleveland, we have a tendency to sometimes hide under the radar, but we have individuals who will give up their time, their talent, and their treasure. And we do need your treasure. And as we look at philanthropy in our community, having been one of the architects, shameless plug here, for the Solar Philanthropy Cleveland, which was in our city in 2019, the whole purpose was to reframe what philanthropy looks like in our community. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, it intersects so well with what we're doing with this Cleveland Black Futures Fund. And so those who perhaps aren't on the grant seeking side, but want to contribute to this fund as a philanthropist, we would gladly receive your dollars. And for many of us who choose to remain undercover, because we want to give anonymously. Mm-hmm. I personally think it's okay to be that example for others, because sometimes we need to see more people that look like us giving. And then we feel the freedom to also give. Many of us have probably heard in our churches, not equal giving, but equal sacrifice. So I may be able to give 500. Someone else may only be able to give 50, but it's still an equal sacrifice from both of us. And so that's what I continue to stress is don't get caught up in the amount of money. If you want to contribute to this fund, you too are a philanthropist and you're helping us in turn give back into our community and those organizations that are serving our community.
Absolutely. All right, now Pastor Connie, you better.
I was going to say, that was very well said.
Uh-huh.
That was very well said. All right, so we getting back to the panel questions, and then again, for all of our viewers, we're going to get to you guys' questions real soon. But the next question is open to anybody, so whoever feels like they want to attack it can just dive in. But what should our listeners do if they run a Black for-profit business or have a great idea for starting a nonprofit?
So the Cleveland Foundation can only make grants directly to 501c3 organizations. That's just the way the IRS regulations are set up. But if you run, and because we know that this is the case in the Black community, people who run businesses, to Connie's point, are often philanthropists in their own right doing the work. Partner with a nonprofit to help them with the work. We welcome partnerships. We have seen in a number of ways, in a number of grant making opportunities we have with the Cleveland Foundation, some really, really wonderful partnerships between for-profit businesses and nonprofit businesses that are teamed up to do great work in the community. So that's welcome. If you are interested in starting a nonprofit, one of the things that this fund can do, if you've been doing this work, if you've got a collective, you've got a group, you're trying to figure out how you can get a 501c3, you could partner with a fiscal sponsor. This fund could even be a way for you to think about how you can get a 501c3 so that you will be set up to pursue other grants. Maybe that's, hiring some nonprofit legal advice in order to do that. That's something that you can do that. You still have to have a fiscal sponsor that has a 501c3 to do it. But again, that's the type of work that we have tried to do at the Cleveland Foundation in the last few years and that this fund could be a part of.
Does anybody else want to chime in on that question?
It's interesting that this comes up because I literally got a call today, just today, from a colleague who is for profit. And again, having to clarify because she thought, because she was focused on a specific project in the community, she thought, oh, this is great. I just heard about it. I'm going to apply. And I said, do you have an arm that's a 501c3? And she's like, no. She said, but the work I'm doing is good. And I kind of responded to her the way Courtney did. I said, you might want to partner with a nonprofit. So I do think that there are many in the community who think that that even if they're for profit, they can apply for the grant. So I'm glad that we're clarifying that now.
Yeah.
And I would add to this that there are nonprofit organizations that do help entities who are looking to solve social problems, right? So there's ECDI, there's Jumpstart, there's many different small business incubators. I know there's the Hispanic Business Center in the Clark Fulton neighborhood. And so there are entities that help, there are nonprofit entities that help for-profit entities to solve problems as well. And though we do have those resources in our community.
All right. So we'll move. Oh, did you have something to say, Trey? I see.
Well, I was going to say, Chanel kind of took mine. I mean, I guess it was just going to be that there's a sizable network of nonprofits who are here to help, who receive funding to help people. I mean, I had a friend of a family reached out, a couple of weeks ago and was like, hey, I want to start a nonprofit. What do I do? And I was like, well, I kind of was like, well, have you reached out to any organizations? Have you looked at some of these support organizations that are already in existence? And I think the point I was trying to make was like, hey, like foundations give money to organizations to help people start nonprofit. Like there are people who receive money to do exactly this. So don't feel like you got to do it alone. I mean, there are, hosts of organizations that are out there who can help you get started. So don't feel like, hey, I got this great idea and I don't know where to go and there's nobody out there that can help me. Like there's a ton of people who are literally getting paid to help people and are waiting to help you. So it's just to seek out that assistance.
All right. Now we'll go to our next question, our last question for the panel, and then we'll go into our virtual audience questions. And I think this will tie in a lot of the questions that we do have coming from our audience. What advice would you give for interested applicants or those still thinking about whether or not to apply?
I'll just say it. Apply.
I was going to say the same thing. Apply. Go for it.
Please apply.
My question would be, what's the hesitation? If you know there's a need there and you believe your organization, your nonprofit can meet the need, kind of going back to what Chanel said, keep it simple, but be clear. Be very clear so that when the applications are reviewed, there's not a lot of guesswork about now. What are they trying to do? Who are they serving? What's the age? Whatever it is. But if you're on the fence, apply.
Yeah.
Apply.
If you read
that's why
those,
we're here.
Yeah, if you read those questions and you have a clear answer to those questions, it's time for you to apply. Don't sit out on those ideas that you have to help our community. We want you to bring those ideas forward. So.
And I think remember that this fund was solely established to support Black-led, Black-run, Black-serving organizations. That's why we're here. And so if you fit that, please apply. Please apply.
Yeah.
And I just want to add one thing just from my experience, it is the Cleveland Foundation, right? And it can be a little intimidating, right? Because the Cleveland Foundation can be seen as part of the system that we are in Cleveland, but they have created this opportunity in this moment with intentionality with a Black woman leading this, and Courtney. And this moment has been created for us to bring those ideas into problem solve to the table. And so take this opportunity. And I would say if you, Courtney can answer the question if people can reapply, but I would take this opportunity to apply, to learn. And if you don't make it this round, don't feel like your idea isn't worthy. Just go back to the table and keep working on that idea and bring it back to the table.
Chanel is so right. I mean, I promise this is not a test. It's not a trick. It's not a gotcha. It is 100% what it says that it is, an opportunity for Black-led nonprofits to pursue and receive funding. You can reapply in the next round if you don't get awarded a grant in this round. We don't know how many proposals we're going to get in. We don't know yet how much we're going to award in this round because we are trying to plan, right? Like we're trying to be as responsible with what we have on hand now, even as we continue to fundraise for this fund, as possible. But if you don't get it this time around, come back in the late summer or next year. And if you've got these ideas, like Chanel was saying, don't sit on them. Do not sit on these ideas. I talk to people all day long, literally, who have incredible ideas, incredible vision. The stuff that they're doing is magical and wonderful that nobody else has thought of, and they don't see it that way. And we can talk about all the reasons why we undervalue ourselves, right? It's systemic. It's not something that necessarily we were born with. But this is a chance for you to not do that, right? Like don't undersell yourself. Put your hat in the ring because it can't hurt. And if it doesn't work out for you this round, it just might work out for you the next round.
Yeah.
For sure. That's all great advice. And this is, just me chiming in on that end as a person who has been through that process of allowing fear to stop you. Do not. It's easy to do. But if you've been given a vision, I believe by God or whoever you believe in, know that it was given to you for a reason. And so that means push forward because this right here, we're giving you the head start. So if you do have that idea or you do have this nonprofit that you are trying to get funding for, literally, like you've got a head start in the race because you're talking to the people who have created it just for you. So I want to jump into the first question from our audience. If you are a 501c3 and wish to be a fiscal agent for other applicants, how does this change the application process and what's the difference?
Mm-hmm. If you are applying on behalf of an organization, so you're a fiscal agent, you have a 501c3, you are connected to an organization that doesn't yet have a 501c3. The organization that doesn't have the 501c3 that's going to be doing the work, the answers need to reflect their work. So don't answer it from the perspective of the agent. The agent's kind of just holding the money. Answer it from the perspective of the organization that will be doing the work. But you as the fiscal agent, the fiscal sponsor, I should say, you're taking the fiduciary responsibility. So you're the one who will have to come back and report on it. So make sure your understanding is really clear with the organization that you will be the sponsor for. But by all means, we are open to this.
Anybody want to add to that? All right, all good. Okay, my fault. I thought I heard something. So are you open to giving grants to sole proprietors who are still just getting started and have no income yet?
501c3, if you're talking about a sole proprietor, 501c3, if you have your board established, that sort of thing, sure. One of the things that we see often in the Black community is that organizations don't have any staff, right? Like they literally don't have any paid staff because they have been volunteering, putting in time. It's a passion project. So we are well familiar with seeing that model of an organization. This could be the opportunity for you to begin to move beyond that model.
Courtney, can you just made a comment, and I'd love for you to speak to it. You slid in there, as long as you have your board established.
Yeah.
So do you want to speak to that?
Yeah.
Because again, some may be applying and may not have a board established.
So in order to be a legally registered 501c3 nonprofit, you have to have a governing board. The governing board in a nonprofit takes all the responsibility for complying with, IRS regulations, laws, that sort of thing. So it's a necessity to have. And sometimes in many places, especially with an organization that doesn't yet have income, the board is the organization, right? They're not just the fiduciaries. They're the ones that's out there doing the work, right? So they're on the board and they're also doing the youth work, doing the elder work, doing all of that. But those are the people who are going to be listed on, your tax documents as being the ones that are responsible for the organization. So you have to have a board. That's probably the first thing that if you're interested in starting a 501c3, you're interested in starting a nonprofit, the first thing that you need to do is put together a board that is willing to do that. And then you can move forward with the application process.
Now, question, is there a max amount an organization can apply for with this fund?
So we are anticipating that most grants will range between probably $25,000 and $100,000, the vast majority of grants. That's not a hard and fast rule, but what we are trying to be really cognizant of, again, is that we don't know how many proposals we're going to get, and we know that we need to do another round this year. So that's going to be the vast majority of proposals, probably. If you have questions about that, go to the website and or email us at clevelandblackfuturesfund@clevefdn.org so that we can, answer your questions about that specifically.
Gotcha.
Can two nonprofits apply together as partners?
Yeah, as Connie alluded to a little while ago, we love to see partnerships.
Love
to see partnerships.
Is that because
LOVE?
Is that because it's like strength in numbers type deal, or what is the reason for that?
It's definitely strength in numbers. And it's just kind of economy of scale, right? Like if you can get two organizations together, can probably get a better deal on a lot of things than one.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, so can the fund be used to provide stipends to adjunct board members?
Board members of a 501c3 cannot receive any compensation whatsoever. That's just the law.
Okay.
It's pretty cut and dry on that one. Is the funding project based?
It is not project based. It's capacity based. And so I think the difference there is what Chanel and Trey were talking about. Like that is the difference between, are we getting the funding specifically to buy like supplies and snacks for kids we may be serving, or are we getting the money to contract the lawyer that we need to make sure our paperwork is in order?
And I want to add, so as like a nonprofit leader, you want to try to get the most flexible dollars as possible. And those dollars happen to be the hardest dollars to raise, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's one reason why this fund is really unique, because there are dollars that can help build capacity and and you can get operational support through this fund.
Mm-hmm.
Good information. This question has been answered already, but I just want to say it, or you all can say it again. Do you already have to have a 501c3? And we understand that the Cleveland Foundation only gives out money to 501c3.
Absolutely.
Now, this was alluded to a little bit ago. If someone applies this month and is denied, can they reapply during the next grant cycle?
Absolutely.
Good to hear. When and how will I know if I've been approved for the grant?
So the proposal deadline is February 26th. And after that, we're going to have to read through all of these, meet as a committee and make these decisions. But we're committed to doing that by the end of March. And you will be informed via email.
All right.
Good deal. Is it on me?
Yeah.
Oh, what are some organizations that can assist me with starting my nonprofit?
So I think that if by starting a nonprofit, you mean like I need to get a 501c3, I'm pretty sure Case Western Reserve has a legal clinic to help organizations like begin to feel out what their paperwork needs are in order to apply for that. Chanel, you mentioned a couple of organizations that organizations can talk to, that people can talk to for assistance. If you can give that again.
Yeah, I think I'm unsure if Jumpstart and those organizations help with that sort of thing, but I definitely know Case Cases Legal Center does. And sometimes in many cases, you know, we have a great library system here in Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, and sometimes the librarians can really point you in the right direction for many things, in particular when it comes to 501c3. So I would reach out to your local librarian.
I think the other organization too that many folks don't think of is Candid. Candid is a resource of enormity for nonprofits. And if you just go to their website, they're national, but this is the hub for I think the Midwest region. They used to be called Foundation Centers of the Midwest, but now it's Candid. And just log on there. They're downtown. I think everyone's kind of closed up now, but they're located in the Hannah building. But phenomenal resources there for nonprofits.
Good information. Thank you. So if you receive a grant, are there benchmarks that have to be met? And I believe Connie kind of spoke on this a little bit.
Yeah. And we will be establishing those, but I'd like to think that anyone who receives a grant, they want us to invite them back to metric what they've done, because again, on your application, you're going to state or request the dollars for a specific purpose. And so therefore we're going to want to know how are you going to measure that, and how are you going to report back out to us to say that you gave me dollars for X and this is what I did and here are the results. And this is why I'm coming back asking for more in the next grant cycle. So absolutely, there will be very measurable benchmarks for us to provide you feedback and you to provide us feedback.
So here we got another one. If you do partner with a fiscal sponsor and are a for-profit, how much do they charge?
This would be a conversation between you and your fiscal sponsor. Let's be clear. The point of this fund is for the money to help the organizations do work in the community. So what we don't want to see is really high profit margins if there is going to be a charge for, managing a grant, which is understandable, right? Like managing a grant takes staff. So you might need to compensate your fiscal sponsor some amount for that, but it shouldn't be exorbitant. But you have to agree that with your partner.
I believe that is our last question from our audience. We got so much awesome information this evening from all of our panelists. We do want to thank you one more time for joining us this evening and sharing of your knowledge and your experiences, as well as giving this information. Once again, we are here to give you all the word information. We are going to say it 1,000 times, but it's also resources through the Cleveland Foundation, funding Black-led community organizations. And I want us to have this website up there one more time for those of you who want to apply. Take a picture of it. If your friend or your family member who is not here needs it, snap a picture real quick, screenshot it, send it over to them, all right? So that you all can have this and use it. Use it. That's the key. Don't just sit here. Don't do anything with all this information. Use it, okay? That's what we're here for. And we really appreciate you all for joining us as well.
For sure.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The deadline was 2/26, right? I think
2/26.
2/26.
2/26 coming up. All right, guys. So like I said, I don't think we have any other questions. So with that being said, we're going to wrap it up. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for the information. Thank you, everyone, for
watching.
Thank you,
panelists, all of you.
Thank you. And we hope you all have a great rest of your evening. And don't forget, apply.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.